Welcome to FitBody Lifestyle, the show where we dive deep into the world of fitness, health, business, relationships, and the art of living a balanced life. I'm Jami.
And I'm Greg, and we're here to give you the benefit of our experiences in the fitness and bodybuilding industry, the corporate world, running a business, personal development, and building healthy relationships.
Whether you're sweating it out in the gym, hustling in your business, or seeking balance in your everyday life, you're in the right place.
So lace up those sneakers and grab that water bottle, and let's get ready to transform our minds, our bodies, and our lives. Hey everybody, welcome to our next episode of FitBody Lifestyle, and we are so privileged and honored to have a special guest here today, Miss Angela White. And Angela White, I think her job title would be Slash because there's so many things that she does. She's an IFBB pro. She is the FBF team manager. She is our adopted daughter. She is there's a bunch of other slashes there, I'm sure. I always call you one job overall, but because you've won so many overalls. But let's start out, Angela, first of all, with this is, introduce yourself and then we'll do a check-in word, okay?
So like Rick said, my name is Angela, and I am an IFBB pro. I am the manager of FitBody Fusion, and also I am a mother. Above all else, I am a mother to a special needs, almost 7-year-old little boy, and
not so little anymore.
He's massive. He's so big. But I'm just honored to be here, and I'm excited to share with everybody my journey with veganism, a little bit about my competition history, and anything else that we decide to talk about.
And I think one of the unique parts about your journey too is you've competed as a pro in 2 separate divisions, which is really cool too. So talk a little bit about...
Wait, before you do that, we got to do our check-in word. I'm sorry, but you got to follow the format. So,
okay.
All right, so what's our check-in word for you today?
Oh, my check-in word is I am grateful. I am just grateful to be here, grateful to share a little bit about my journey, share knowledge, and hopefully just inspire some people to just get healthier, whether that's veganism or just simply going after whatever it is that you want. So I'm just really grateful.
Awesome.
Okay, well, you inspire me daily. So
Same.
So tell a little bit about just that journey and the divisions that you've competed in.
Yeah.
Just so people have an idea.
Yep. So I started in bikini, and I started competing in, 2013. I started my first prep. Then I started my first prep again in 2014 and finally stepped on stage that year. And actually, that's when I joined with Jami and FitBody Fusion is in 2014. But like I said, I started in bikini, and that's what I turned pro in. And then once I was in the bikini pro circuit, I noticed that my lower body was just a little bit more developed. I don't want to say it was overly developed, but I really enjoyed training lower body. And given my development, I had to just be really cautious and really careful of developing my quads too much. So I decided, what the heck? I've already competed in bikini as a pro. Why not just go to wellness? My thing is this should be fun. Whatever it is that you do, and for me, it was competing. It should be fun and enjoyable. So I decided, what the heck? I'm just going to start training harder, eating more, letting my body just do what it wanted to do. And then I did compete in wellness. I competed in wellness for technically 2 seasons, and that was 2022 and 2023, which went really well. I placed in a couple shows. I did not place so well in a couple shows. And at my last show, it was Texas last year. Edela, who is one of the head judges, her and Tyler actually came up to me and said, I would like to see you in a bikini again. So, in the moment I was like, what? After I just put in, at that point it was like 3 years of hard work in the gym, really growing my muscle. And now I was like, I'm too big for bikini. But, they put me in some bikini poses, and with a few tweaks, I sure as heck was back in bikini. So I was super excited. I finished 2023. It was actually my birthday. I did Clash in bikini, and that's when Sandy, first thing that came out of her mouth, and Sandy, if you guys don't know, she is, the mama of the IFBB. She is, she's the head. And she told me, bikini is your division. So that kind of solidified that. Went back into off season, did the best we could to downsize the quads, needed to grow the upper body still a little bit, and ironically, we still needed to grow the glutes for bikini. And then, now I'm 5 weeks out from my second bikini show after wellness.
I love that you share this because I just wanted to highlight the resilience and your willingness to pivot as you needed to. And so I think that's an important personality trait that helps you be successful in everything that you do. So I really love that so much. So I want to jump over to our topic for today, which is...
Can I ask a follow-up question before we get to the veganism?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the episode of you interrupting me. I love it. This is awesome.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but
Special guest Greg DeBernard.
No, not that at all. It's a common question, Angela. I know that you have dealt with it. Jami, you have dealt with it. So really, it's a question for both of you. But for the athletes out there that are debating, and we get this question all the time in new athlete sessions, if you will. Do bikini or wellness? What division? So I know for you, you explained your journey, and what is the guidance? And again, for both of you, to an athlete who wonders, do I belong in wellness or do I belong in bikini?
That's a whole nother episode.
I love that question. But in short, there's two sides to this. You can ask the athlete, how do you want to look? At the end of the day, do you want to look like wellness or do you want to look like bikini? That should matter above all else. Now, of course, how do you want to train? Do you want to train hard and heavy and just kind of, beast mode, I could say? Go for wellness. If you really like the streamlined look, go for bikini. However, you also have to take into consideration your genetics and be realistic. If your goal in this sport is not to go to the Olympia and win the Olympia, go after the look you want to look. But if your goal is to be successful in the sport, you do got to find that balance of, playing with your genetics and taking those into account. And typically that's the vision you would want to go in. However, like I said, at the end of the day, this should be enjoyable. And it should not be, I want to do wellness, but you're not lower body dominant and you got to do all of these crazy things to get to that wellness standard. Is that enjoyable? Is that worth it? So it's really more so ask yourself, how do I want to look? What is my ultimate goal in this sport? And what am I willing to do? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's a personal decision. And, if you have a wonderful coach, they're going to talk to you about it, just like Jami did with me. Talk to you about it and make sure you are going in the direction that you truly want to go in your heart. So
I love that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you mentioned the structure thing.
Absolutely.
So I think that's I love that advice so much, too, because there's so many times that I've had people come to me and go, if I'm going to stay in bikini, then it means I can't work my lower body, and I really enjoy doing my squats and this and that. And, so, okay, well, then maybe, if the structure lends itself, and like you said, and if it's a realistic goal, then that might be where you shift. But there are a lot of those things to take into consideration. And I feel like we could make a whole episode out of just this topic.
I do think we talk about this in another episode. And I do, one of the things just to maybe capture this is we talk about the three questions all the time. What do you want? Why do you want it? What are you willing to do to get it? And I think those questions don't apply to just your big goals, but they apply to the little goals as well. So getting clear on that. And then the other thing that you mentioned that I want to highlight is the importance of getting feedback from others. So your feedback was given by Edela and Tyler and Jami and Drew and other people around you, but you sought feedback from judges and coaches to figure out where you fit, to just factor that into your choices. So I do think that's an important aspect. And for a young competitor coming the first time on stage, hey, do the bikini and the wellness division in a regional show and see what you like better, see who else shows up, see what the judges' feedback is to help you make that decision.
So I want to jump into this topic because I know there's a lot we want to cover and we've only got a limited amount of time. So let's jump into it.
I can share too. So another reason why I went from wellness back to bikini is because I am vegan. And, it is a common misconception that just because you're vegan, you can build just as much muscle just as easily. It's not true. We are at a disadvantage to an extent. Now, you can do it smart. You can make your, your amino profile, your protein content as equivalent as you can to someone who is not plant-based. However, there were certain things that I was unwilling to do in order to remain vegan in the wellness division. So that was a huge reason why I pivoted back to bikini, because I would be able to stay true to myself, remain a vegan, remain healthy, keep all the other factors, supplementation, kind of at bay, at the lowest point that I can. So that's a big reason why I decided to go back to bikini.
And I want to dive into so many of the things that you just mentioned, because there's just so much in there. Start by telling us why you chose to become vegan to start with, because you were already competing prior to becoming vegan, and then there was a point where you shifted. So share with us, like, what drove that?
Yeah. So like many of us competitors, or I would say just all of us women, we have gut issues. At the end of the day, we got gut issues. So, my gut issues could have stemmed from many, many things. Restrictive dieting, chronic stress, repressed trauma, things that I didn't face, many reasons why I developed gut issues. But, I had the typical candida, H. pylori, gut dysbiosis, leaky gut, all of that. And I tried the medication. I tried, all of the supplementation, all of the peptides, and nothing was working. There was a lot of mental reframing that I did, a lot of mental healing that I did that really, really improved some things. But something was still missing. And, like anybody else, Googled, how to fix this, how to fix that. And then I started coming across a lot of, just different research and different, I would say, people's experiences and different stories on people who did go plant-based. I do like to preference that I am plant-based, although yes, I am technically vegan, I am plant-based. And plant-based just means whole foods, basically. So I started doing all the research. And then I was like, what the heck? At this point, I have nothing to lose, and I've always dabbled in different diets anyways. I was plant-based previously, like off and on. I was vegan off and on, doing the processed vegan foods, pescatarian, just vegetarian. So I've kind of done it all, and I already knew what I was going to be doing.
You were a chickentarian at one point.
Oh, that's a whole nother story. Yes, I was a chickentarian, and that was a whole other topic. But yes, so I decided, what the heck, I have nothing to lose, and I only have, my health to gain. So I decided that moment on, I was cutting out all animal products, and all animal products included every meat, every fish, dairy, creams, cheeses, eggs, egg whites, whey protein, casein, literally all of it. And I swear within a week, things were better. I suffered with IBS, IBD. I don't even know which one it was, but I suffered with that. And then all of a sudden, things started to really improve. I started to, not that weight loss was the ultimate goal, but I started to lose weight naturally. And I was technically on paper eating more, or I should say in MyFitnessPal, I was eating more. But there's, that the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the vegan pudding. And I started to feel better, do better. And then I was like, you know what? I can't go back. I can't go back. And also, like, once you're vegan and plant-based, you start to learn a little bit more about the dairy industry, the meat industry, what goes behind the scenes, all of the food, the additives and the hormones and all of that that's added to the food. And I'm not just saying just meat and dairy, but literally all of these processed foods. And I started to, really become solely plant-based, so whole foods, nothing really processed. And my health just completely turned around. Never was I at such peace with my body, with where I was. My disordered eating began to heal itself because I no longer feared food in the sense of how it was going to make me feel. So many reasons. But I mean, at the end of the day, I became vegan, plant-based for health reasons and never looked back.
And now you coach a lot of athletes. Mm-hmm. The majority of the athletes you coach are vegan.
Yep.
Yes. And so I know that there's a lot that goes into being able to make sure you're still getting your nutrient profiles, which you mentioned above, the amino acids and things like that. So somebody brand new, because I know that veganism is a hot topic right now, being plant-based. There's a new Netflix series out, which there's always, so people get all excited and want to jump on board and things like that. And I feel like one of the biggest issues is people are not like educating themselves first and understanding. So a lot of times people will naturally gravitate, like you said, towards the more processed things, which I'm not saying that, like not enjoying some of those things, that's fine. I mean, it's definitely doesn't have to be an all or none proposition. But if you're going to go into a new lifestyle that's so completely different, if you've been eating an omnivore diet and then you're going to be plant-based, like what are the things that you initially start teaching athletes, what are the most important topics they need to consider?
Yep, absolutely. So the first thing that I take into consideration is where is their current fiber content? Because if you switch to plant-based, you are now getting your protein sources from plants, which means more fiber. And more fiber is great. However, you have to ease your way into it. Too much fiber is not a good thing. It's not fun. It can cause a lot of GI distress, although, yes, it's good for your gut microbiome. As the more fiber you have, the diversity of fiber, the more diversity your gut microbiome would be. However, I like to see where their fiber is. And maybe I do... I'm not a fan of low protein on veganism. In fact, that's a whole nother topic that we'll talk about. I prefer your protein to be higher than what it would be if you were not a vegan, if you were an omnivore. So I typically see where their fiber is. I establish that. I do give them typically higher carbs and a moderate amount of protein, maybe about, I would say, 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Now, of course, that's going to be very relative. If you have, say, a 200-pound woman, I'm not going to give her 200 grams of protein. That's just too high. I might put her at 125 if she's not already plant-based. And then I would go up from there and maybe get her to about 150. But I would check the fiber first. I would, make sure that they understand their selections of food. So I would provide a full list of foods, all the different vegan options they can choose from, and then go from there. I'm huge on biofeedback. So like every week when they check in, how is your digestion? How is your hunger? How is, your energy, everything else? Because all of that is just as important. But establishing the fibers first, and also establishing their GI issues. So do they have any current or previous GI issues? We don't want anything to flare, anything to come back. And then I would go from there, slowly increase the protein as their digestive tract can handle it. And then also supplementation, making sure that they are taking in vegan fermented EAAs or BCAAs just to account all of the bases. Now, I will be honest, I don't take BCAAs and I don't take EAAs anymore. I did for a long time when I was first getting into veganism as I was building my protein up. However, now I get in about 150 grams of protein. I'm about 120 to 125 pounds, and that has seemed to do wonders for me, and it's enough.
So, Angela, what would be, because I think the guidance on the fiber is very interesting and applies both to vegan and non-vegan. So how would you advise somebody, or what do you look for to determine when's the fiber too high, when's the fiber too low?
Great question. So when it comes to too high fiber, you can actually experience your bowel movements. So using the restroom, you could experience constipation or you could experience loose stool. So either one can happen with too much fiber. Now, of course, you have insoluble, you have soluble, so those do make a difference as well. But we would go based off of that. We would go based off of, are they feeling really bloated all the time? Now, bloat can be a variety of different things. It could be maybe they don't do well with broccoli. We might switch that out. So it's really just going based off of their feedback, really evaluating their bowel movements, making sure those are becoming more consistent and more regular. You can go based off of the Bristol stool chart. That's a really great thing to kind of determine the type of bowel movements, which will determine your gut health. It does help with the fiber content too. So there's a variety of ways, but again, it goes down to their feedback, and really trial and error. 35 grams of fiber for one person can be way too high. Whereas for me, if I'm not getting 60 grams of fiber a day, I'm hungry, my bowel movements are off, nothing is right. But 60 grams to somebody who, only gets in 25 to 35 is way too much.
But you had to work up to that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, there was a time when I was getting, 15 grams a day? And that was okay for me. Granted, I didn't know what it was like to feel as good as I do now that I'm here.
I love that you talked about getting a baseline first on the clients, because I do think that's what's important. Because like you said, if you have a client coming to you, because I see this as well, that they've only been eating 15 grams of fiber, and now all of a sudden we want them to eat 25 or 30 grams of fiber, the initial, reaction of their body can be really uncomfortable. What I've found is kind of like a general rule of thumb that has worked for me is 5 grams per week at the maximum. Yep. So if I've got somebody coming in and they're only comfortable with 15, maybe we bring them up to 20 and, give them a little bit of time. And if they start feeling good like that, bring them up nice and slow.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I've seen somebody as high as 100 grams a day, which I personally can't imagine in
it's
my
a lot.
body.
It's a lot.
But that was something she really wanted and worked towards very slowly and gradually and was able to do it. So it's really interesting how your body can adapt if we give it the time and the patience. I think we're in a society where we want to press the button.
Oh yeah, go.
They take the magic pill and bam, everything is where we want it to be.
That's even magnified in the bodybuilding industry, where hey, if I do something for a day and it doesn't work, well, time to do something different.
Yep.
And I'm not exaggerating about a day. Some people will report back after you give them an adjustment and they don't feel, well, I don't feel it today. Well, okay, let's at least get a week into this before we
been there, done that.
My body didn't change. I've worked out for a whole week.
When you say been there, done that.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
You personally have done that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think many of us have early on in our journey. And, same thing when I went vegan. Although, yes, I did experience pretty good changes within a week or two, after the first day, I'm like, okay, am I better? Am I better? Even now, am I better? It still takes time. There's still health things that I'm working on. And being plant-based and veganism doesn't solve everything. It makes things better 100%, but there's still so many other factors and things to really take into consideration.
I want to jump into protein because I feel like protein is going to be like one of the biggest concerns, or should be at least, for somebody who's thinking about, doing a plant-based diet. And so I want to know how, especially because you mentioned, initially kind of to bridge the gap for you, you did use the EAAs and things like that, which I think is smart, especially when you're first learning, because it just covers your bases. Yeah. It's like taking a multivitamin. I usually tell people take a multivitamin, even if you're eating really healthy, it covers the bases and make sure you're not missing anything. So with the protein, and you're giving your list to your athletes, here's some things you can choose from. What are your top protein sources? What are the things that you tell people to look out for so that they are making sure to get their full amino profile? Because that is the big thing we know you get the full amino profile when you eat any kind of animal-based protein. So now how do we translate that into plant-based?
Yep. So first and foremost, it's actually a common misconception that plant foods, plant proteins don't have full amino profiles. They do. They have all your amino bases. Now, the ratio is different. That's the thing. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about your protein sources, so you can mix and match. Don't just rely on tofu. Don't just rely on seitan, which is like vital wheat. It's like a wheat gluten, a wheat protein. Don't just rely on pea protein powder. Really get a diversity of protein to cover your bases. Now, my favorite would be, there's actually this new protein. It's actually fava bean. It's tofu without the soy. And we'll talk about soy. I love soy. Soy's not a bad thing. There's a time and there's a place for it. There's certain people that can take it, certain people that shouldn't. But fava bean tofu is literally it's like 16 to 18 grams of protein, 0 fats, and 0 carbs. It is absolutely incredible. So I use that specifically in prep. I will also combine that with a protein powder. The powder that I use, it's actually a blend of pea protein, brown rice protein, and I believe that there's another protein mix in there as well. But again, it's all plant-based. It covers all of the bases. They don't actually add any BCAAs, any EAAs in there at all either. Another great option, like I mentioned, is the seitan. So that's a wheat gluten protein. And with that, you can make bread, you can make little like meatballs. It's a little bit of a chewier texture. Absolutely great. Another option is pea protein crumbles. So this one is actually, it mimics the texture of kind of like ground beef, ground turkey, that like really like I don't know, that grounded texture. That's phenomenal. Very low in carbs and fats, and very high in protein. So those are mine. And then of course, protein powder. Use your Ninja Creamy, make yourself some ice cream, make yourself some pancakes, some waffles, throw it in your oatmeal. So it's really easy to get your protein still as a vegan. It takes a little bit more effort and understanding, specifically if you are tracking macros, because some of the most, I should say, of the protein sources that are vegan and plant-based do contain fats and carbs as well. So based on the protein source, it'll just depend on the other contents outside of protein.
Did you bring up tempeh?
Tempeh. So you could say tempeh, tempeh.
I don't know how you say it.
It's
You say potato, I say potato.
Tomato. I don't know.
Distinguish that from Tempe, which is a place in Arizona.
Yes, it
so,
is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tempeh. So that's it. It is a soybean. So, and that's absolutely wonderful as well. It's a little bit higher in carbs and fats, but that one's absolutely wonderful as well. And yeah, but leading into the soy. So soy is a great source of protein. It actually is one of the best in terms of balance between aminos, the profile in it. However, soy, it can cause some issues for people who do suffer from autoimmunity or other types of, or I should say just autoimmune diseases. It can flare a little bit, or if people are very sensitive in their GI tract, it can cause some issues. But it just depends, just like anything else, like the broccoli, like the cauliflower, it's about finding what works for your body. There's no right or wrong, and there's many different options that you can choose from.
And what about beans in terms of a protein source? Because I know when I do plant-based, one of my favorite things was to do like the bean pastas, because there are a lot of protein in that, and then you've kind of got that pasta sort of experience. So I love beans. And there's some pros and cons to beans, but I want to know your perspective on
Can
that.
be. Now, if you are a 15-gram fiber person, that's where the issue would lie.
Yeah.
So beans, in my opinion, are not a source of protein. They are heavy in carbs in terms of the ratio. I like to say a protein source in terms of, a vegan food, the protein macro is the highest content. So if you have beans that say have 22 grams of carbs and only 8 grams of protein, that's a carb source. That's not a protein source. Now you can get a really good balance still by having that, but also you're not going to have 3 servings just to get 24 grams of protein.
And you might not feel so good.
No. You would not feel so good.
I've done it.
Absolutely not. And thank goodness I wasn't around you. Anyways, yes. But no, beans aren't a source of protein. Again, they can aid with everything else. It's again about getting a variety. So if you had that mixed with maybe some of the ground, the pea protein crumbles, absolutely, that's perfect. There are some pastas that are like the black bean fettuccine. Now, I don't know how they do this, but it literally has like 24 grams of carbs and 24 grams of protein. That's great. That's absolutely wonderful. Now, the fiber content in that is probably about 10 grams of fiber, which is a lot, simply just that, because I assume you're going to add in some tomato sauce, maybe some veggies, so the fiber is going to be even higher. So that's just something to also take into consideration. But at the end of the day, it's about just reaching that total number of protein and doing your best to space it up evenly, getting in enough fiber, not too much fiber, and still staying within your calorie range. Because it's just as easy to undereat on a vegan diet as it is to overeat. So
let's talk sodium.
Yeah.
Because I know that when we talk about processed versus non-processed, and also talking about some of these protein sources, I know that when we buy them pre-made in the grocery store, a lot of times what we're finding is there are a lot of additives, whether it be sodium, preservatives, things like that. And I know with you talking more about the whole foods, how do you balance those things, and like what would your advice be? Because obviously, like, I do feel like there's got to be some bridging of the gap, especially if you're going from being omnivore to plant-based. So some of these things might help you bridge the gap, but then ultimately, like, where do you want to be?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I recommend if anybody is transitioning from an omnivore diet over to a plant-based diet, that you utilize a fitness app. a food tracker. I personally use Chronometer just because you're able to see your full profile. So you can see all of your amino acids, you can see all of your vitamins, your micronutrients, all of that, because it's, although being a vegan is very healthy, there are a few nutrients that you could become deficient in, such as your B12, which is the most common one. It's same thing with the amino profile. So I recommend to track that. In the app, you also can see your sodium. So if you are transitioning from omnivore to plant-based, now I do utilize processed meats as bridges, because I don't want somebody to go straight over to this. And again, it's that fiber content. So I do utilize a little bit more of the pre-made seitan, of the tempeh versus making it at home. Now, those foods do come, any packaged foods do come with a higher sodium content. So I do like to make sure that that's still in check. It's not too high. Now, if it's somebody who's like, nope, I want to go straight to it. I want to give me all the plans. Let's do it the real way. That's fine. But now their sodium could be way too low. And if your sodium's too low, you lose the electrolytes, you can get lightheaded, you can get dizzy. There's so many negative downsides to drastically dropping your sodium intake. So again, adding salt to your foods, making sure you're adding things such as kimchi or sauerkraut, which is naturally high in sodium. And so forth. So it's going to go down to knowing what you're putting in your body. And the only way you can truly know without being able to rely solely on your biofeedback is to see it on your phone, to see it on paper, to see it in the app, what you're exactly consuming.
I love that you talked about too low of sodium is also not good. Mm-hmm. And I feel like in this world, especially when people are looking at nutrition from the perspective of weight loss, I actually had a client recently say to me, because I looked at her food log and I'm like, you have no sodium. Like of course you dropped 3 pounds because you went from, 2,500 milligrams to 500 milligrams. Like why did you do that? And she said, I was worried about my weight. And I was like, no. That's not, because that's not body fat that we're losing. I mean, you're basically dumping off a lot of water, and sodium is important. It shuttles, the nutrients into the cells. So I love that you brought that up, that there's not good. It's not good or bad. It's balance.
Exactly. And I like how you actually said about the water. So like sometimes if you go from, really any diet, and you go higher carb, even if your calories remain the same, you can actually gain a little bit of weight. Now the weight is not fat. It's going to be water. There's, for every roughly 1 gram of carb, your body holds on to about 3 grams of water. You can give or take that. But so if you increase your carb intake, you're going to inevitably increase some water in your body. Now if you do like the DEXA scans, the body scans, you're going to know that it's not body fat, and it does level out. So, typically after a week or two, you're pretty level, and then you'll start dropping again if that's your goal. But a lot of times people freak out. Same thing like with the fiber. If you have too much fiber, your gut is literally full. Your colon is literally full. Mm-hmm. So you're going to not expect to go up on the scale. You can't. So until things level out, then your weight is going to stabilize and then go in the direction based on your goals.
And we talk a lot about the scale and how people could get so wrapped up into that, and how important it is just to really focus on the why and not so much the fact that it is changing a little bit here or there.
Been there, done that. Yep, absolutely.
As I was listening to all this, one of the thoughts that I had, Angela, was that when we were vegan back in 05 to 09, somewhere in that time frame, I think before you were even in our life, it would always impress me how we had to struggle to find the vegan sources. They were there, and we were in California, so you would think that California would have more sources. I don't know why. Maybe that was just my own stupidity, but as you describe all these sources, it does bring to mind the fact that there are so many more. This is much more accessible. I think it was accessible to us, but we had to work at it. It's more accessible now because there are more sources and more education and more information out there. But in that realm also, we know that one of the things that can come with more information is bad information.
Absolutely.
So how do you distinguish the good from the bad? The viable information from the, well, maybe not so much?
Yep. No, absolutely. But first, I do want to touch on that there are more vegan foods available now, but there's more vegans in the world, or there's more people who want to incorporate plant-based food. And back then, because there wasn't the demand, therefore there wasn't the need to create these kind of products.
Supply and demand.
Exactly, supply and demand. But when it comes to information, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're vegan, if you're omnivore, if you're, solely, carnivore, that's a thing that's going on now. You're going to find information to back whatever it is that you want. And that goes down to the studies. Who funds these studies? You can find the dairy industry. They're going to fund a study that says having milk with your breakfast it could say increases your bone density. I don't know, something, right? But what they don't show is that they've replaced the milk with the sugary orange juice that had all of these added things into it. Absolutely, that's going to be a better option, Or they say adding eggs into your diet actually drops your cholesterol. Yeah, because they utilize the eggs instead of the sugary French toast that was full of butter. Absolutely, that's going to be a better option. That's why the study's going to show that there's a benefit to having eggs. However, same thing can go for vegan stuff. They can say, this, whatever the study is beneficial because you had plants. It really based on who funds the studies, how long were the trials, was it equal across all sides of the trial or sides of the study. But at the end of the day, it's truly about what works for you and what works for your body. I'm not going to sit here and say that somebody who eats meat is so bad for them. Like, yes, there are negative side effects to meat. However, everybody's body processes things differently. How can somebody who smokes cigarettes for 80 years not have lung cancer? Yes, they're the anomaly, but that's not it's not my choice to say that is wrong of them.
But we could say with the person who smokes, I mean, we know there
Absolutely.
are negative. So if you're the outlier,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the difference between finding outlier studies versus studies that are mainstream.
Exactly.
And I think, who funds the study, that's definitely relevant. The parameters of the study.
Mm-hmm.
What we, I think, struggle with a lot in our industry is finding studies that are oriented towards athletes in particular, because there is a difference when you test this with somebody who's an athlete, when you test these parameters against somebody who's an athlete versus somebody who's not. And that's why it's hard to figure out what works and what doesn't unless you're willing to do that experimentation on self and also stick with it long enough to determine, is this working, is this not?
That's the thing, is sticking with it. So often do we throw in the towel with anything too quick before we actually have a chance to see what's working and what's not working. Maybe you try a certain way, whatever that way is, and it doesn't work right away. Doesn't mean you got to just slash it all. You can change a little things here and there within what you just changed, and eventually it could work. And hey, maybe it doesn't, and that's okay. But you have to be open to both sides of the outcome and being willing to accept and pivot as needed. But again, it goes back to does it make sense for you? Is it worth it to you? Just because I'm an athlete, and do I want to make it to the Olympia? Of course, absolutely. What athlete would ever say no to that? But am I willing to throw away being plant-based? Am I willing to throw away the things I believe in and I morally stand for? Absolutely not. That's not worth it to me.
And I think that as we talk about that consistency is so important, and that people will implement a lifestyle change and they will then abandon it or do something worse, which is change variables within that before they give the actual baseline an opportunity to manifest itself or to determine whether it works.
Or they're not consistent.
Right.
They're
But
not
I
consistent.
also think it's okay for people to try things, and I agree. Like, stick with it long enough to know whether or not it's working for you. And I know that for me, it has run the gamut. I mean, I was a raw vegan for over a year. I've been keto. I mean, you name it. I've done all the different things, and I do think that there's some value in seeing in trying different approaches, and then when the one clicks, like this clicked for you, and it was perfect. So I think there's, I also feel like, it took me a while to get to a place where I wasn't in that all or none sort of mentality. And this is, my daughter's has been a vegan for a long time, as you know.
For a different reason.
Yeah, and she and I talk a lot about, the extremeness, and and if because from her perspective, she's coming at it 100% from the ethical side, not so much from the health side of things. Not that she doesn't want to be healthy, but I mean, just her motivation. And so, my thing with her is like, if you could have people change one meal a day, like what impact would that have on the planet? What impact, what I mean? So I love that, I love that we brought up that, if you're going to do it, give it enough time to work. And at the same time, it doesn't have to be an all or none sort of proposition. You can start to incorporate more plant-based items. And you know what I mean? It doesn't have, I feel like that's where people sometimes get thrown off, is where they feel like they have to go to the extremes.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's about making changes every day. Like there's Meatless Monday. Like if you want to have Monday be your vegetarian day, it doesn't have to be vegan. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And also, you don't have to place this label on you. You don't have to say, I am vegan and everything you do must be vegan. No. Have I accidentally consumed something that had egg in it or dairy in it? Absolutely, I have. I didn't know. Now, I definitely knew a few hours later, but, I didn't know, and I wasn't going to beat myself up over it. Like, hey, things happen, and that's okay. I just moved on. Just kept doing what I've been doing, and same thing goes for people who want to make a lifestyle change, whether that's veganism, whether that's just getting fit, no matter what it is. Say you don't eat vegetables, just add in 1 serving of vegetable a day. Find which vegetable you like, because that's going to be motivating. Change up your spices, change up the way you cook the food. If you don't like vegetables, then go buy something already pre-made just to get it in. And then eventually your taste buds do change, things shift, and you do become consistent, but it's not all or nothing.
I love that you're saying this, because I was just, as you were talking about this, I was just thinking about accessibility. And you can go to most fast food restaurants now and get a plant-based burger. And then I was thinking about, okay, but for some people, myself probably, I'll put myself in that category, I'll go get a plant-based burger, but I want cheese on it. So I'm not really doing a vegan meal at that time. And I think what you're telling me, and what you would say to anybody, is that that's okay. That's a step in that's a step.
Yes.
I'm not going to call it a step in the right direction. I'm just going to call it a step. And as you become more comfortable with that, okay, you know what? I really like this plant-based burger on a non-plant-based bun, on a non-plant-based cheese on it. But eventually, if I'm able to then make those incremental change, we talk a lot about the boiling the frog thing, and I think that's got a negative connotation. But the metaphor in terms of making small changes and ultimately getting the water to boil, not that we want to cook ourselves in water, but that small change aspect of then producing the big change.
Yeah.
And that sounds like what your journey has really been.
Absolutely. And like I've said, I've done it all, and it took me a long time to figure out what works for me. Even with being plant-based, there are certain things, certain foods that don't work for me, like the processed meats. Did I consume them initially? A little bit, I did, until my stomach was like, absolutely not. So I don't. And again, it was that trial and error, and, taking steps every single day. I still do,
Angel, I wanted to hit on that really quick, because you said to get, I've done all these things to get where I am, but we also know, because we see this in your daily practice, is that you don't have the arrived mindset. You have the, okay, I'm here now, what else can I discover mindset.
Yes. Yeah, and it's the curiosity mindset. As we know, there's always new information coming out. There's always new research. There's new foods. There's new everything. And if I don't stay curious to continue to learn, to continue to, develop my understanding of what true health is, then I'm going to be, I don't like to use the word stuck, but I'm just going to stay here. I don't like being stagnant. I don't like being content. I want to learn. I want to grow. And, I want to always be healthier and healthier, even if my blood work is impeccable. Doesn't matter. How can I improve my cognition? How can I improve my focus? How can I improve my energy? Just because your blood work's perfect doesn't mean these other things aren't perfect as well. So, yeah.
And I'm a big believer in coaching.
Absolutely.
And, if somebody is looking to make a shift like this, being able to have somebody who's already walked the path and been in those shoes, like yourself, because people come to me a lot and say, oh, do you coach plant-based? And I've been plant-based in my life. I don't focus on it like you do. So if I were coaching someone, I would come and get advice from you, so to me, I think that's really important. Go to the source, go to the person who's done the homework, done the research, walked the walk, coached many people through this journey. So I know we're running out of time, and we could talk about this all day long,
Yes.
but I'd love for you to share how, if somebody is interested in coaching and, you know, in shifting into a plant-based lifestyle and or competing as a plant-based athlete, how would they find you?
Absolutely. So, of course, social media. So, as you guys know, I work for FitBody Fusion. So you can find FitBody Fusion on Instagram. You can find myself, Fit Green Queen on Instagram. And all you have to do is go to the FitBody Fusion website, which is just fitbodyfusion.com, request a consult with me. So request me as your coach, Angela White. And then I will literally get on the phone with you, talk about your goals, really establish where you're at. And again, there's no commitment, just getting you on the phone. I would love to provide free education to anybody who needs it. And then go from there. See if we are a good fit for each other. See if this is a lifestyle you want to, you know, transition to. And then from there, I could get you started with the program. If not, you know, we have an amazing team of coaches that all specialize in different things. So say maybe you do want to be vegetarian. We have amazing coaches who also specialize in vegetarian. Or say you just want to focus on health, but you don't want to quite be vegan. That's okay. You know, we have an amazing team of coaches that specialize in everything. But again, if you are plant-based and you kind of want to really stay in that world, I would love to work with you. And again, just social media, Fit Green Queen, fitbodyfusion.com, and yeah,
Awesome.
find me there.
All right, then I think it's
Checkout
time for
word.
the checkout word.
Oh, I'm still grateful.
Okay.
I mean, even more grateful and blessed, I should say. This podcast has been absolutely wonderful and so much fun. I feel like I'm sitting at home with you guys on your couch. So yeah, I'm just super blessed and super grateful. And I hope everybody received even just a little bit of value, and yeah.
I can tell you, I received a lot of value. So I think mission accomplished on that. And everybody, welcome, or thank you for tuning in to. Do I say tuning in? I don't even know if that's appropriate.
You say that every time.
I know, but I don't know why. It's not like
Tuning
a
in,
radio.
yes. It actually
like,
says it in the outro that's
Does it
going to
say
play after
ta-
this.
ta- tuning
Yes,
in?
it does.
Okay,
It
all right,
does.
then we'll go with that. Remember the 3 B's: be safe, be good to yourself, and be good to each other. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to FitBody Lifestyle. We hope today's episode has left you feeling motivated and equipped to tackle your fitness goals, business challenges, and the daily dance of life. Remember to value progress over perfection. Life's tough enough alone. Find the chosen family around you to help you along the way.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FitBody Fusion.